ベッド
はっとやっくるくるおのれ逃がさないわくるりん
気をつけて
くるくる逃がさないわくるりん感謝してまだわかっ人間は星空を掌握する欲望を隠さない私もよくるくる逃がさないわ私が誰だか知ってるこんな大きなダイヤモンドあげるねくるりん戦闘は設計みたいなものよ
サイは投げられた全てを失うかはたまた手に入れるか
くるくる
買いだ
逃がさないわくるりん
遊んであげるよ
何見てるはっと逃がさないわくるくる私が誰こんな大きなダイヤモンドあげるね
Okay, so it's no secret that The Sims has a lot of expansions. Ever since the first Sims game was released in early 2000, EA has been pumping out DLC pack after DLC pack, everything from pets and seasons to time travel and supernatural creatures. These expansions have always been contentious, whether the Sims community are arguing over which one is best, criticizing their content, or just condemning packs in general for being overpriced money grabs, they always seem to be in the spotlight. And with The Sims being the hell franchise that it is, that's often for good reason. From buggy and unplayable messes to weird brand tie-ins, there's a lot of terrible packs. But on the other side of the coin, or rather the simoleon, there are a ton of amazing expansion packs that build on everything great about The Sims and introduce tons of great new features. The fact that The Sims can actually be a pretty great game is often lost in discussions about the poor quality of the franchise, so today I'm here to offer a more balanced perspective. We're gonna take some of the best, some of the worst, and some of the most expansions and stuff packs from throughout the years and go over what makes them so great or so terrible. But if I were ranking cool and epic sponsors, Mistplay would be at the top of my list. Mistplay is a loyalty app for us gamers out there. Us XP grinders, those who would rather ride the battle bus than the bus to work. Those of us who cut our finger and say, I think I just lost some HP. I'm sorry. Whether you're looking for a little help covering your Spotify subscription, your daily coffee, or even a cheeky Fortnite battle pass, with Mistplay you can earn rewards simply by discovering and playing mobile games. Find tons of new favorites. Casual, adventure, card, puzzle, word, strategy games, and more await you on Mistplay, and the more you play, the more you'll earn. You can redeem your points for gift cards from your favorite brands like Amazon, Walmart, Xbox, Xbox, PlayStation, and more. Over 100 million in gift cards has already been redeemed on Misplay just from chilling out and playing some cool new games. If you're a mobile gamer or have been wanting to get into it, Misplay is the perfect way to get your brain working, chill out after a long day, or just relax and vibe, all while earning points that you can put towards amazing rewards. How swag is that? Visit misplay.com/izzies or click the link in the description to download Misplay for free. You'll get 200 bonus points for signing up today, plus use my code IZZIES100 inside the app for an additional 100 free points, which will help towards redeeming your first gift card. See the description for all of the details. It's easy to fondly look back at The Sims 3 with rose-tinted glasses and think about how fantastic and amazing and flawless it was, but more and more people tend to forget that the third installment of the game had its fair share of duds. And there is no better example of this than the candy-coated glitter-dusted nightmare that was Katy Perry's Sweet Treats. Released in 2012, it was the 6th stuff pack for The Sims 3, but the lack of any clear stuff pack label on the packaging led many to believe that this was an entire expansion or even a spin-off game, despite hilariously claiming to be quote-unquote packed with more stuff than you have ever seen. In reality, it was a pretty lackluster stuff pack, with a meager 5 tops, 4 bottoms, 14 outfits, 5 hairstyles, and a whopping 1 single outfit for male Sims. If this isn't proof that men are oppressed in society, I don't know what else is. This game was released during Katy Perry's teenage dream era, when she was going for the whole California Girls Rainbow Candyland acid trip aesthetic, and boy does it show in these outfits. Most of them are just taken straight from various music videos, photo shoots, and performances, like this big bedazzled candy dress, the iconic cupcake bra, and this mysterious lollipop shirt that one of her background dancers was wearing. I was gonna spend a whole section here ranting about this horrible gumball dress which looks like a 5-year-old drew it, but then I looked up the real dress and it just looks like that. I can't even hate this. This is a legitimately faithful recreation. The furniture included in the pack isn't much better. Most of the items are pre-existing models, slightly altered to have candy decals on them. This bar is just a candy striped recolor of the regular base game bar, as is this little peppermint table. There are dresses and shelves and even a slip and slide, which are slightly modified versions of items that already exist in the base game, and for 30 USD, which is 10 more than a standard stuff pack, it just wasn't worth it. This stuff pack was incredibly hyper niche, appealing only to die-hard Katy Perry fans, or Simmers who wanted to make bright candy themed worlds. And in that case, you could find tons of fan-made custom content that was both higher quality than the items featured in the Sweet Treats pack, and also free. In my opinion, the main reason behind the wave of hate that this game got was the sheer cash-grabby celebrity tie-in-ness of it all. The Sims franchise had been doing tie-in collaborations since The Sims 2, with stuff packs featuring H&M, IKEA, and Diesel, but never before had a pack been so blatant, from the giant Katy Perry PNG slapped on the front of the box, to the higher price point, to the quickly cobbled together assortment of low-quality items. It was pretty clear that this project had been rushed out to meet some ill-advised contract between Katy Perry's agency and EA. It's also worth noting that there's a collector's edition of the Showtime expansion pack, again featuring Katy Perry themed items, but these were more of a bonus edition rather than the focal point of the entire pack. That didn't stop them from, again, putting her front and center on the packaging though. Katy Perry Sweet Treats was a meme in the Sims fandom for a long time just because of how shameless and terrible it was, even for EA, and it's a reminder that even during the Sims 2 and 3 eras, the series was far from perfect. The Sims 2 apartment life harkens back to a time when the franchise was more edgy and gritty. None of the chic luxury penthouse business from The Sims 3 Late Night, and none of these clean, modern living solutions introduced in The Sims 4 City Living. Unlike those expansions, the horrors and thrills of apartment living was depicted in all of its glory in The Sims 2 apartment life. Having to bang on the wall because your noisy neighbors are up at 3 AM again, only being able to afford terrible, cramped apartments in the worst part of town, and having to maintain a good relationship with your roommates lest they move out. While in real life it could be a pain, apartment living in The Sims 2 was incredibly entertaining and a great example of how The Sims 2 was a lot more willing to put Sims in uncomfortable situations to hilarious effects. Also, this expansion literally added class as a feature to the game. That's not a joke. Every lot would now have a class ranking from high to low, calculated by how expensive the building and furniture were, how messy it was, and the values of the surrounding lots. New social classes for Sims were also added, with socialite and techie Sims living in high class lots, and gearheads, quote unquote, living in the low class lots. From what I looked up, a gearhead is like someone who's really interested in like mechanical things and technology, but the Sims in this expansion dress kind of like steampunk and goth, and the name just makes it sound like it's related to drugs, so what a gearhead actually is in The Sims 2 kind of remains a mystery to me. Either way, it's hilarious to me that EA added wealth inequality and class division to the game as fun new features. Next up, the wage gap. All around, this is one of my favorite Sims expansions of any of the games. Not only does it add a wealth, pun intended, of new features, a hip new town, and the ability to live in all kinds of shared living situations, but it's also just super nostalgic for me. I have vivid memories of going to the store and getting to pick out any expansion I wanted, and the possibilities felt truly endless. The bright blue packaging and its promises of apartment living called to me, and I still remember the excitement of waiting for it to install, truly on the edge of my seat with excitement. I also had my first gay Sims experience TM in this game, which I'm sure a lot of people who have played The Sims can relate to. She was a good witch and she fell in love with an evil witch because love knows no bounds. Yeah, also witches were a thing in this game and they were great. Speaking of Sims expansions that are memorable to me, I'll always remember The Sims 4 Get to Work, and not in a good way. For the longest time, the Sims community had been asking for rabbit holes to be fully playable. For context, in The Sims, rabbit holes are basically locations like work and school that your sim disappears into, and you can't see what's going on inside these buildings or play your sim while they're inside. As a kid, I thought that rabbit holes were stupid and restricting, but now that I'm older, I understand that they're a necessity to a smooth gameplay loop, and the reason I understand that is because The Sims 4 Get to Work. The expansion promised 3 new fully playable careers and no rabbit holes. For the first time ever, you could actively control your sim while they were at work, and 3 careers: doctor, detective, and scientist. It also allowed Sims to open up their own retail businesses, a feature adapted from The Sims 2 Open for Business. Though I had been disappointed in the launch for The Sims 4, this kind of renewed my hope for the series. Playable careers and explorable rabbit holes were features that the community had been asking for a long time, so for a minute there I really thought that The Sims 4 was gonna kinda wrangle itself back into shape and become the game that Sims always dreamed of. What we got instead was far from a dream. The jobs are often repetitive, especially once you've leveled up to the highest rank and have no more progress to make, at which point it genuinely just becomes a 9 to 5 slog, and I'm pretty sure that's what most Sims players are playing the game to get away from. Sims are only at work for a set period of hours each day, and that allotted time generally isn't enough to get all of their tasks done, especially tasks that require a lot of traveling or walking around. And with this being The Sims 4, there are issues aplenty. The detective career is widely considered the hardest and most unpleasant career due to the fact that the clues you gather often don't even match the perpetrator of the crime, making it kind of a shot in the dark as to who to pin as your suspect. Sick Sims often bug out and show the wrong symptoms at the hospital or no symptoms at all, and additionally, despite the fact that the hospital is now a playable area, you can't actually go there if your sim is sick or pregnant. The only non-problematic career is the scientist, generally considered to be the most fun, but even its charms wear off after a while. The reason that work and school were relegated to rabbit holes in the previous games is because it's basically a full-time job keeping your sim clean, fed, and not on fire, so it's exhausting and grindy having to actually go to your sim's chosen profession every day, queuing up task after task, making sure all of the work is done, hitting deadlines and career targets, and then going home and having to cook and clean and oh god, I'm just describing real life now. The Sims 4 Get to Work is proof that there are indeed limits on how life like a life simulator should be, and dragging your sorry ass to your 9 to 5 every day is just a little bit too realistic. The Sims 3 Island Paradise is actually one of my favorite expansions of all time, which I know is a weird way to preface an entry that I said was not great, and if it wasn't for my personal affinity for this expansion, I probably would have put it in hell tier, because Island Paradise is broken. Infamously so. Released in 2013 as the 10th Sims 3 expansion pack, Island Paradise was a heavily themed pack focusing on island living with features such as scuba diving, sailing, houseboats, and even resort creation and management. The expansion featured a lush tropical world called Isla Paradiso, roughly translated to Island Paradise, which was a large island surrounded by many smaller secret islands that Sims could uncover by completing different achievements. Despite the huge amount of new content and the vibrant lush world introduced, introduced in this pack, it's well known for being one of the most risky expansions to download because of the terrible routing issues that plague Isla Paradiso. Routing is a system within the code of the game that allows Sims to move throughout different parts of the map without getting stuck or going into inaccessible areas. For example, steep mountains, cliffs, and deep water are usually non-routable, whereas things like roads and sidewalks are designed for Sims to walk on. If a map isn't routed correctly, it leads to Sims getting stuck, which leads to lag as their motives go down and they endlessly queue actions for going to the bathroom or eating, which they can't do since they're stuck, eventually leading to their untimely death. The inclusion of houseboats in Island Paradise caused a routing nightmare. Houseboats have to be docked to board them, and most of the ports in the game are very poorly constructed, making it a game of chance whether you'll actually be able to board properly. NPCs also sometimes abandon their houseboats out in the middle of the ocean, and without mods that automatically clean them up, they'll accumulate and cause a ton of lag. There are a bunch of specific households that have issues as well. The Scott household's boat isn't docked at the start of the game, causing lag, and Miss Scott is pregnant but not on maternity leave, causing issues when she tries to change into her work outfit but can't due to pregnancy. This is a recurring issue throughout a bunch of other families with pregnant women in them, and additionally there's a glitch where many mothers in pre-made families don't actually have a familial connection to their children. These glitches are to the point that many guides have a list of families to delete from Isla Paradiso, as well as a list of mods to install which will help fix routing issues and catch errors before they start causing lag. Island Paradise has always worked mostly fine for me, and I absolutely love like marine life and ocean exploration and scuba diving, so getting to go to this lush island and swim with sharks and explore caves and find mysterious map pieces was kind of like my dream expansion. So it's always going to be incredibly near and dear to my heart, but you know, that doesn't make it good. If it actually worked properly, it would be an easy 10 out of 10, but unfortunately it's just one in a long line of Sims games that were completely broken on launch. And for a AAA game published by an incredibly popular and massively profitable company like EA, that's just not really acceptable. My hatred of stuff packs began when I was but a child after buying a few of the Sims 2 stuff packs, namely teen style stuff, H&M stuff, and glamour life stuff. I thought I was the coolest kid on the block with all my extra content. And then I found out about custom content and I felt like the biggest idiot on the planet. Little did I know that on the internet there were thousands and thousands of items of hair, clothing, accessories, furniture, and game modifications that I could have downloaded for free. Content that was generally quite a lot higher quality than the stuff included in those packs, which I usually paid about $20 to $30 for, by the way. And then there are the shameless brand tie-in packs. I had the Sims 2 H&M stuff despite the fact that we didn't have H&M in New Zealand back then and I had no idea what it was, and there was also IKEA home stuff. The Sims 3 had, of course, Katy Perry sweet treats as well as Diesel stuff, and The Sims 4 had Machino stuff. Machino? I never know how to pronounce that. And speaking of The Sims 4, well, the situation with packs in The Sims 4 is a little bit convoluted, to say the least. Whereas in previous installments there were two types of packs, stuff packs and expansion packs, in The Sims 4 there are 4 different types of packs. Expansions, game packs, which are like expansion packs but smaller, stuff packs, and game kits, which are like stuff packs but only include a few items. There are over 70 packs of DLC for The Sims 4, which is an appalling amount for any franchise and likely the reason why the base game recently went free to play. There are so many packs you need to buy just to get a basic fleshed out game experience that it's basically pay to play. And then of course there's the needless segmenting of content into ridiculous packs like bowling night stuff, home chef hustle stuff, bust the dust kit, which was based entirely around vacuuming, bathroom clutter kit, and of course Star Wars Journey to Batuu, which we'll get into later. The Sims as a franchise has always been accused of putting basic features behind paywalls, but only in The Sims 4 have so many basic features been cut from the base game to be included in endless additional DLC packs, to the point where the base game has been made free to play for the first time in Sims history. It definitely doesn't give me hope for The Sims 5, that's for sure. The thrills and spills of college living, pranking nerds, keg stands, and unforgettable cheerleader ex-jock romances. You know, at least that's what I've picked up from a bunch of American college movies. I'm assuming those are realistic portrayals. The Sims 2 University, released in 2005, was the first expansion released for The Sims 2, and boy did they start the series with a bang. University is such a fun, silly expansion, and it encapsulates both the depth and the total randomness of The Sims 2 perfectly. Alongside allowing your teenage Sims to apply for and attend a college of their choice, they can also live in dorm rooms, Greek houses, or private residences if their parents are rich, where they'll meet all kinds of kooky classmates to befriend. On the college campuses, there are student unions, cafes, gyms, and more, providing all of the amenities that a clueless freshman could ask for. The cool thing about university campuses is that they're sub-neighborhoods, meaning that you get to travel to a whole new location where time doesn't pass. Which sounds kind of nightmarish in theory, but it basically just means your sim gets to go on a fun, wacky adventure and then come back home without losing any days while they were away. And in The Sims, days are precious because life is short, at least on default settings. There are also a slew of random and wacky new features thrown into the mix, like the Resurrectonometron, an item which allows you to bring Sims back from the dead for a price. If you don't cough up enough simoleons, the Grim Reaper will bring back your sim as a zombie, which was the first life state introduced into the Sims 2 series, and my personal favorite, by the way. Zombies have bluish grey skin, walk with a limp, and constantly think about brains. Their personalities and skill points are wiped too. Cow plants, carnivorous man-eating plants, were also added in this expansion alongside streaking, secret societies, phones, and MP3 players, which really marks this game as a product of its time. It's such a fun, silly expansion that encapsulated everything great and goofy about the game itself. And it was just the first in a long line of fantastic expansions for The Sims 2. Ah yes, EA's failed money-grabbing Star Wars tie-in pack. This and that one other pack that we shall not mention until the end of the video are probably the most infamous Sims 4 blunders, both becoming huge controversies, TM, and receiving scathing criticism from the community. Journey to Batuu was released in September of 2020 as the 9th game pack for The Sims 4, and oh boy did it flop. Despite the community voting for a completely different expansion pack in the public vote, Star Wars Journey to Batuu, which lost to all of the other entries by a country mile, was voted the winner. Journey to Batuu allowed Simmers to journey to Batuu, an alien planet from the Star Wars franchise. Their Sims could battle with lightsabers, meet alien species, and even acquire their own droids. They could also complete quests throughout the world of Batuu, most of which were extremely boring fetch quests which required finding a specific NPC to talk to or walking long distances to perform social interactions. Despite the very beautifully modeled and designed world of Batuu, basically all of the buildings were rabbit holes and non-interactable set dressing, and the only reason that the world looks so good is because it's an exact replica of Disneyland's Galaxy's Edge theme park. As many Sims pointed out, it was incredibly disappointing and insulting that the community's votes were ignored in place of a cheap and blatant theme park advertisement for Disney, which was basically a giant empty world with Star Wars set dressing, a few Star Wars themed NPCs, and a bunch of pointless and boring quests that amounted to your Sim spending hours traveling back and forth throughout the world to talk to different NPCs. It was pretty low even for EA, and the entire Simming community lost a lot of trust and faith in the company after this disaster of an expansion. There's nothing better than having a little guy living in your house, and EA understood that. From cats to dogs to birds and guinea pigs, and of course horses, which were exclusive to The Sims 3, the Pets installment allowed Sims to fill their homes with furry little bundles of joy. Or aggressive, messy, and untrained hellspawn sent from the depths of Hades to torment your Sim. Take your pick. The Sims Unleashed was the first Sims game to introduce the concept of pets, allowing you to adopt all kinds of cute critters to train, dress up, and love. The Sims 2 Pets expanded on this concept, introducing many different breeds of felines and canines, as well as in-depth customization, so you could replicate your real-life pets or just make strange and bizarre Frankenstein creations. One of my favorite parts of The Sims 2 Pets as a kid were wolves. Occasionally you could encounter a specific wolf called the leader of the pack who had glowing yellow eyes and could turn your Sim into a werewolf, and The Sims 2 werewolves were genuinely freaky looking and far more iconic than any of the other werewolf designs they would come up with for future installments, at least in my opinion. Maybe that's a controversial one, I don't know, sound off in the comments. The Sims 3 Pets once again expanded this concept. This time you could control and play as your pets, running, jumping, frolicking, and destroying your way through town. Dogs and cats could learn the hunting skill, and hilariously on the wiki next to the section about pet skills is a note that reads, "If The Sims 3 Ambitions is installed, stalking prey outside will increase the chance of a cat or dog being hit by a meteor." Ah, The Sims. Never change. Horses were a brand new addition to The Sims 3. Horses could learn the racing and jumping skills, and Sims could learn the horse riding skill. You could go to the horse riding park or set up your own riding courses at home with all kinds of jumps and features before taking your horse to competitions, because by gum, he's gonna be the next Far Lap, I tell you what. Rest in peace, Timaru icon. Of course, cats, dogs, and horses could also breed, meaning that yes, you can cuddle with kittens, puppies, and foals to your heart's content. Unfortunately, The Sims 4 kind of broke this winning pets expansion streak when they infamously released My First Pet Stuff, which was an expansion for an expansion. It was a whole debacle, and it's generally considered a huge step back from the previous 3 entries. They also released their pet pack without horses, and then later released a separate pack for horses, again an example of features that were previously included in one expansion being divided up into a bunch of smaller and objectively worse packs. Still, the pets expansion is an absolute classic staple in the series, and it goes to show that sometimes the simple things are the best. Cute animals plus The Sims equals a happy player base. The maths doesn't lie. Or actually, maybe it does, I don't know, I'm not good at maths. Generations, released in May of 2011, was the 4th expansion pack for The Sims 3 and promised players, quote, new celebrations, dramatic life events, and all new ways for your Sims to express their creativity. This pack is interesting because unlike the others, which have pretty clear-cut premises like pets, university, or seasons, Generations' theme is a lot more vague. Rather than offering a tropical paradise to explore or pets to play with, it fleshes out each life stage, adding new interactions, features, and events for toddlers, children, teens, and adults. Though on the surface this pack doesn't bring much to the table in the way of bombastic new features or amazing new locations, it brings so many quality of life additions that it's widely considered a must-have pack for any simmer playing The Sims 3. Kids can dress up using a costume chest, go on field trips, attend after-school activities, play in a treehouse, which is its own rabbit hole hilariously, and sleep in bunk beds. Teens have a whole host of chaotic new interactions such as household pranks, attending house parties and prom nights, learning how to drive, sneaking out, high school clubs, and boarding school. For adults, the focus is on love and family. Sims can now have a reputation based on how many flings or even affairs they've had, which can affect how other Sims view them. They can also have a midlife crisis, a 6-day period in which they'll continually wish to do outlandish things, such as buying a new car, moving house, divorcing their spouse, or traveling abroad. There are also a bunch of new items and interactions for weddings, including being able to ask step-parents for your spouse's hand in marriage. The only downside is that elders aren't given any other new interactions aside from being able to use a cane, which is a real shame because elders are already kind of like an life stage, and this pack would have been perfect to give them a ton of new interactions. Being able to move to a retirement home, shuffleboard and bingo skills, mobility aids, and even being able to add Sims or, for the extra drama, remove them from your will. All this and more could have been possible, and it would have been really fun, but alas, it was not to be. Still, all of the additions already in the game are fantastic. It makes every life stage feel thought out and fun to play through with unique experiences and interactions that really make it feel like your Sim is going through the motions and having those life experiences throughout each generation. Weddings in The Sims, much like real life, are always kind of a mess. The guests never sit where they're meant to, or sit at all for that matter. Sims are always wandering around the aisles or in front of the couple getting married, and even the Sims-to-be sometimes run off mid-ceremony to go look at an interesting object or randomly change clothes. Sims weddings are chaotic as hell and never look how you want them to. It's a staple in the series and kind of a running joke within the community, which is why Simmers were so excited when My Wedding Stories, a game pack which would revamp weddings with all new features and controls, was announced in February of 2022. However, things would soon start going downhill. And by soon I mean literally the next day, when the Sims team made a blog post titled Our Commitment to You. The blog post addressed the 2 Sims featured on the box art and in trailers for the pack, a lesbian couple called Dominique and Camille. Quote, as we moved through our development and brand storytelling process, we became aware that the way we wanted to tell Cam and Dom's story would not be something we could freely share around the world. We are steadfast in upholding that commitment by shining a light on and celebrating stories like Dom and Cam, so we have made the decision to forego the release of My Wedding Stories, where our storytelling would be subject to changes because of federal laws. Regrettably, this means that members of the Sims community in Russia will not be able to purchase this game pack. While many in the community stood by EA's decision, others were incensed by it, and the hashtag Weddings for Russia was spammed at the developers on Twitter as well as in the chat of the developer live streams. And all of this outrage actually worked. The day before the game was set to release, EA posted another announcement stating that the pack in fact would be releasing in Russia after all, but would be delayed by another week. It was never explained how or why this decision was reversed, but one can only assume the immense pressure from the community as well as several large and prominent Sims fan sites became too much. But that was far from the end of the drama that was Wedding Stories, because then the pack actually released to a terrible reception. A pun intended. From the cake continually spoiling mid-ceremony to guests wearing casual outfits to issues choosing ring bearers, officiants, and flower pals, to married Sims getting caught in an endless loop during their vows, to once again guests not sitting down for the ceremony, which remember was one of the big issues this pack was created to address. The worst part is that the pack had been this way for quite some time. Many popular Sims creators, including Plumbella, Lil Simsy, and Carl's Sims Guide, had been very vocal about the bugginess of the pack when they received their early access copies, and it didn't look like very much had changed for the full release. Additionally, modders discovered some unused code for the game which added new moodlets and the ability for pets to be ring bearers, suggesting that content was cut from the pack to rush it out for a Valentine's Day release, as February 17th was the original intended launch date. Though a large bug patch was later released to fix the many issues in the heavily broken game, it was too little too late. By this time, many in the Sims community had grown frustrated with the constant cycle of unfinished, broken, or rushed out packs, and this was the final straw. EA never apologized or even addressed how blatantly broken this full price pack was, so many Simmers still harbor a lot of resentment towards a franchise and a company that they once used to love. I know we ended on kind of a downer there, but I think it's important to acknowledge the multifacetedness that is the Sims series. Are there some absolute flops? Yes. Have most of those flops occurred post Sims 4? Yes, but the series has some fantastic entries, some expansion packs that really do expand and open up the world of The Sims, and I hope that this video shone a light on both the good and the bad of the series. Thank you guys so much for watching, I really appreciate it. As always, had a blast talking about The Sims. I know, sorry, I've been talking about The Sims a lot lately, it's very like self-indulgent because I just really like talking about The Sims, but yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it, hopefully it's not too much. I definitely have other Sims videos planned for the future, but I'll try to space them out so it's not just like Sims mania. Either way, thank you so much for watching and I really appreciate it. If you have any suggestions, be they Sim based or other suggestions for videos you want to see, definitely let me know. And yeah, thank you for watching and I really hope to see you in the next one. Bye! A huge thank you to my Garfood overlords over on Patreon: Sheriff Whiskey, Xavier Arajo, Jiffy the Punk, Grip Gunderson, Bunzo, Sophie H, Simon, Katrina Likes 5e Stuff, Oliver Brains, Thigh Heavenly, Dozo Blint, Hazy, Zoe Mars, Matt LRJ, Michelle Olsen, A Riddle Wrapped in Enigma Hidden by a Question Mark, Astrian Vortex, Joe Bradshaw, Jar the Bar, Vivian Valencia, Jet Secret, Helm Hamburger Hand, Chicory, Dana Homegardener, Jesse Chisholm, Lee XX, Blue Mayfeld, and Doug. If you want to join these guys over on Patreon, the link will be in the description. And yeah, thank you guys so much for supporting me, thank you for watching the video, and I really hope to see you in the next one. Bye! The Sims is a franchise that I love dearly. It was one of the first games that I ever played and owned, and ever since that jazzy music started up and that green plum bob popped up on screen, I fell in love. I stumbled my way through The Sims 1 as a really little kid, grew into an obsessive Sims 2 superfan with all of the expansion packs, and going into my tween years, I was a ride or die fan of The Sims 3, spending hours downloading custom content, creating families, and living out their weird and wild lives. I rented out The Sims 2 for PS2 more times than you can count, stayed up late playing The Sims 3 on my Nintendo DS, and The Sims Castaway is still one of my favorite games ever made. I grew up with this franchise and I love it more than anything, which is why it hurts to say The Sims 4 is kind of a train wreck. Since the day of its release, it's been plagued with controversy, weighed down by game-breaking issues and poor design choices, and generally just extremely messy. Unlike the other videos in my Sims Deep Dive series, unfortunately this won't be an examination of the lore or the characters and Easter eggs, but rather a dissection of its rocky history, its chaotic development, and its controversial legacy. Today let's dive into The Sims 4 and dissect how one of the most beloved franchises in the world became one of the messiest. Before we dive into the depths of The Sims 4, I just want to give a huge thank you to Matchmasters for supporting this video, a game which is neither messy nor disastrous, which will probably be a much needed breath of fresh air after you watch this video. Matchmasters is a super fun match 3 game with endless play possibilities, with tons of modes from 1v1 where you can verse players from around the world to adventure mode to tournaments and much more. There's a playstyle for everyone. Spice up your game with a wide variety of fun boosters which you can charge up by matching blue stars and unleashing on your opponent to bring the win home. The multiplayer element of the game is truly unmatched. Get it? Like matched. As you can join teams with millions of players across the globe, dominate the leaderboard, and join epic events to win prizes. Plus, if you love collecting like I do, you can collect tons of cool stickers to fill out your sticker book, as well as new outfits to customize your avatar. If you download Matchmasters using the link in the description or this QR code on the screen, you can get a free $10 pinata pack, with coins, awesome boosters, stickers, outfits, and a lucky spin. You definitely don't want to miss out on an epic offer like this, plus it helps to support the channel, which is also very cool. Thank you so much to Matchmasters for supporting this video, and now let's start with the chaotic story of The Sims 4. The Sims 4 was officially announced by EA and Maxis in May of 2013, confirming rumours of a 4th installment that had been swirling for years. The announcement post read, in part, "The Sims 4 celebrates the heart and soul of the Sims themselves, giving players a deeper connection with the most expressive, surprising, and charming Sims ever in the single-player offline experience. The Sims 4 encourages players to personalise their world with new and intuitive tools while offering them the ability to effortlessly share their creativity with friends and fans." The Sims 1 had been the groundbreaking first entry to the series, introducing the world to the life sim genre and sparking what would go on to become a multi-million-dollar franchise. The Sims 2 not only transitioned from 2D top-down graphics into full 3D, but introduced tons of iconic characters and locations, as well as mysterious and fascinating lore. The Sims 3 completely opened up the world, allowing Sims to roam freely with no loading screens at all. It had the most in-depth customization yet, and truly felt like playing with life. Needless to say, the bar was set extremely high for The Sims 4 to continue this evolution. Each of the previous entries had been groundbreaking in its own way, bringing something new to the table and continuing to push the series to new heights. The community's hopes were high throughout 2013 and early 2014 as EA dropped small snippets of gameplay demos and trailers, and though they were very secretive about sharing any information, fans brushed this off as a marketing tactic in order to drum up hype.
This is a bold step forward for our Sims as they come to life like never before in The Sims 4. The Sims 4 combines revolutionary Sims with powerful creative tools and all new emotion-based gameplay to reinvent the Sims experience. We chose to reveal The Sims 4 for the very first time here at Gamescom because many of our most passionate fans live right here in Europe. Built on a foundation of new technologies that we call Smart Sim, The Sims 4 gives you the power to create and control an entirely new generation of Sims. We've really put the focus on the Sims themselves. Our Sims have evolved into intelligent, emotionally aware beings whose every action is informed and affected by their emotional states.
Fans and media outlets alike were blown away by the Creator Sim demo that dropped just a month before the game's launch, showcasing in-depth customization like never before. Rather than using sliders, players could push, pull, and sculpt their Sim's face in countless ways, creating by far the most versatile and unique Sims of any game yet. A big part of the marketing for this game were the Sims themselves. There was a huge focus on how expressive and fun their personalities were, how wild their stories could be, and how intuitive, intelligent, and realistic they were. Rather than having memories plays or moodlets like in past games, Sims were now more expressive than ever with emotions which would ebb, flow, and change throughout the day based on many factors. Similar to mood from The Sims 3 but greatly expanded upon, it could be influenced by any number of things and would impact how your sim acted and reacted in various ways. They could multitask, develop deeper relationships and emotions, and were more complex, multifaceted, and random than ever before. The home building feature was also praised, introducing more complex building features as well as a ton of quality of life improvements that made building more efficient as well as fun. It was shaping up to be an incredible game that would once again revolutionize the life sim genre and open up a whole new world of possibilities for players all across the world. Basically, the hype was real. I would have been about 12 at the time, so in intermediate/middle school, and I'm gonna be real with you, I skipped school that day to go get my pre-order copy. Yeah, I wasn't skipping school to hang out with friends or drink or do anything rebellious. I was skipping school to pick up a pre-order copy of The Sims 4, and it's only cause my mom said that I could. Yeah, I guess you could say I was pretty badass back then. Anyway, I went to the game store and I picked up my pre-order copy, which came bundled with a bunch of exclusive items like in-game downloads, this really cool Sims 4 like concept art book, and this delightful plum bob headband, which I still treasure to this day. I was so excited. I got home, I was counting the seconds as the game installed. I booted up the game, and yeah, The Sims 4 had a pretty rough launch. Players who booted up the game expecting an expansive 3D world to explore were instead greeted by this extremely flat 2D colourless mobile game-esque map, which confirmed everyone's worst fears. The Sims 4, unlike its predecessor, was not an open world game. Instead, it was more akin to The Sims 2, with loading screens in between each location, though granted multiple lots were clustered into small neighbourhoods that could be freely traversed, making it a little more open than the 2004 game. But it still felt like a huge step back for the franchise, and after the widely praised open world of The Sims 3, which had all but revolutionised the franchise, The Sims 4 felt small, boxed in, and kind of dated. The map itself was so bad that many wondered whether the Sims team had accidentally left an early piece of unfinished concept art in the game with how flat and lifeless it was. The map was far from the only element that was accused of being unfinished. Several huge features were missing from the game upon launch, which brings us to the pool gate/toddler gate debacle. Only in The Sims 4 could you have an ultra serious viral controversy called pool gate. Okay, so a quick bit of Sims history for context. Historically, family playstyles have been a huge aspect of the Sims series, whether it's for the purposes of role-playing and blogging about their fictional sim families or completing legacy and other family-based challenges. A huge chunk of the player base tends to heavily favour family-based playstyles. And up until this release, EA had been pretty good at catering to this. Babies, toddlers, children, and teens were all life stages with their own nuances, and while adult life stages tended to be the most fleshed out, toddlers, kids, teens, and elders all had their own unique quirks and playstyles. The other piece of context to know about The Sims is that pools are iconic. Pools and swimming have been a feature since the first game, and ever since Simmers found out that you could drown Sims by removing pool ladders, they've become a classic staple of the Sims series, a symbol to represent the sadistic streak within every Simmer in the most silly way possible. So with this in mind, pools and toddlers weren't just some random throwaway mechanic, but weirdly they were actually pretty important to the Simming community and had a lot of history behind them, which is why when The Sims 4 launched without pools or toddlers, players were pretty upset. The game had expansive, advanced building tools, but without pools it just didn't feel like The Sims. And the absence of the toddler life stage meant that babies would just poof straight into fully formed school-aged children, which was just kinda weird and creepy. These weren't the only features missing at launch, with some other big ones being ghosts, another iconic series staple, creator style, the in-depth customization system from The Sims 3 that allowed players to customize the color and pattern of pretty much every single object and wearable item in the game, and burglars, cemeteries, cars, and illnesses, just to name a few. EA's lofty promises of intelligent, reactive, and deep Sims with realistic emotions were also shaky at best. In The Sims 3, players could choose 5 unique traits for their Sims out of a list of 63, anything from loving the outdoors to being kind to hating kids to being a vegetarian. With The Sims 4 though, players could only pick 3 traits out of a list of 47, though Sims do also get a bonus 4th trait once they pick their aspiration. On top of this, The Sims 4 traits appear to be less complex, causing fewer behavioural changes and quirks when compared to their counterparts from previous games. Again, the trait system felt like a step back in a game that's marketing hinged on it having smart, spontaneous Sims filled to the brim with personality and depth. And the emotion system. Oh boy, the emotion system. Simmers went into the game expecting a complex emotion system that would dictate how Sims would act and react to the world around them in subtle but meaningful ways, and what we got instead was bonkers. Sims can experience the following emotions: angry, bored, confident, dazed, embarrassed, energized, fine, flirty, focused, happy, inspired, playful, uncomfortable, sad, scared, tense, and asleep. Each emotion has various levels of intensity. For example, energized Sims can go on to become very energized, or angry Sims can become very angry and eventually enraged. Theoretically, it's a cool system that gives every action its own emotional consequence, which can go on to affect how Sims react to the world around them. For example, focused Sims can build skills faster, hot-headed Sims can use anger to improve their fitness skill at a much faster rate, and gloomy Sims become more motivated by sadness. It's honestly a really neat idea, and it's used in some really cool ways, but unfortunately the mechanic itself is a pain in the ass at best and actively broken at worst. Sims' emotions were crazy sensitive, and often all it would take was one interaction with an object or Sim to transform them from a sobbing mess to a happy ray of sunshine. Sims' moods would switch on a dime, and not just occasionally. One of the biggest issues that I had while playing was the fact that Sims' emotions were flipping around constantly to the point that it became annoying to keep track of. For me, my Sims ceased being independent people with their own personalities and traits because whatever emotion they were feeling would envelop their entire personality, and that's all they could focus on. It became a game of trying to keep Sims' emotions level to get a moment of peace so they wouldn't randomly become super inspired or terribly depressed or weirdly flirty. To me at least, the Sims' emotions felt more realistic in The Sims 3. And before I go off on this tangent, I just want to address something. I know that a lot of the simming community gets frustrated when people repeatedly compare The Sims 4 to the previous games because it should be evaluated on its own merits. And I do get that perspective, but on the other hand, I feel like all of the Sims games are so intrinsically linked with each other in the way that they build off of each other's mechanics and lore and all kind of come together as one harmonious franchise. Additionally, this game wasn't advertised as a spin-off or a departure from the series. If we were talking about Medieval or Castaway or even The Sims 2 for PS2, the expectations would be way different because Sim spin-offs are kind of bonkers. But this game heavily relied on advertising itself as the fourth installment of the mainline series, so I think it's only natural that players are going to use the previous entries as a baseline and a way to draw comparisons. This is all to say there are going to be a lot more comparisons throughout this video, so strap in, I guess. Anyway, in The Sims 3, moodlets laid out in clear detail what feelings or actions were impacting your sim and why, as well as indicating exactly how many points that changed their mood by. And importantly, they didn't change mood drastically. Most moodlets impacted how Sims felt by a fairly small amount, so if your sim was feeling really awful, it was either something huge like a breakup or a death, or the culmination of a bunch of little things like being tired and hungry and wet from the rain, which is pretty true to real life. It's usually a build-up of small annoyances that really end up getting to us. In The Sims 4 though, any random thing could set a sim off on a giddy high or a crashing low, and it was exhausting to keep up with. Needless to say that after skipping school to get my pre-order copy of The Sims 4 and booting it up to discover all of this, I was disappointed. For the first time in my entire life, I had jumped into a new Sims game and not liked it. But I was far from the only one, and by all accounts the game's launch was kind of a bit of a disaster, and to explain why things were so messy, we have to go right back to the very beginning. The story of how The Sims 4 came to become such a train wreck begins long before it came out. The Sims 3, the third installment in the series, obviously, was first released in 2009, and over the next 4 years it would release a total of 20 expansion and stuff packs before wrapping up development on the game in 2013 with the final expansion pack, Into the Future. And don't worry, we will be discussing the issue of expansion packs later in the video. I'm sure a lot of you already know where this is going, but hold on to that thought. The Sims 4 development is fascinating because once you learn what actually happened, all of the bizarre, poorly conceived choices found in the final release make complete sense. Originally titled Project Olympus, or just Olympus, the original Sims 4 prototype was in development as early as 2008 during the Sims 2 era, and it was intended to be an MMO. And to understand why EA wanted to come out with an MMO during this time, we have to dig even further back in the annals of Sims history to EA's 2002 release of The Sims Online. The Sims Online, or TSO, was an online multiplayer game in the style of The Sims 1 that allowed players to customize their character, build their own lots, and of course chat with other players in real time. With the very early graphics and limited online capabilities, it was essentially a glorified chat room, and despite EA estimating that the game would quickly reach 1 million active players, the player count peaked early at around 100,000 and would steadily drop from there. Sales were poor, player retention was less than stellar, and it was considered by most to be a $20 million flop. Yes, that's how much they spent on this game, unsurprising considering how prohibitively expensive online multiplayer games are to maintain, and no, they absolutely didn't sell enough copies to earn even a modicum of this money back. In 2008, after running for an impressive 6 years, The Sims Online was shut down. Coincidentally, that very same 2008 happened to be the year that EA started development on a new multiplayer Sims game, Olympus. Technology had progressed a lot since The Sims Online was released in 2002. By the time of Olympus's inception, The Sims 2 had been out for years and development had already started on The Sims 3, and additionally MMOs and online games had become increasingly popular over that time. Various screenshots and prototype images of the project have leaked throughout the years, and from these images it's pretty clear that Olympus and The Sims 4 are the same game, despite EA claiming that they have nothing to do with each other. Aside from the fact that multiplayer server code from Olympus has literally been found in The Sims code, flat out confirming that they are the same project, a quick glance is all you need to tell that, yeah, these are definitely the same game. The stylized, sharp, almost geometric art style is strikingly similar. The Sims themselves look almost identical to The Sims 4 Sims, with some hairstyles and clothing items even being the same, and it can even be seen in the environments. Alongside the furniture and lots looking very similar, this early development footage of the neighborhood map in this flat 2D style heavily resembles that oh so controversial neighborhood screen from the final game. The simplified graphics and gameplay of Olympus were intended to have a low graphical budget, so it would be far easier to run as a smaller cross-platform multiplayer game, and this very much falls in line with EA's MO at the time. They stated in 2011 that they were moving away from 3D single-player games into casual social games with microtransactions, since they were showing quote-unquote better growth, aka they tended to be a lot cheaper to pump out and easier to monetize. By August of 2012, several years into development, a full working prototype of the game had been developed, and the online interface and chat functions were in progress, as we can see from this very early concept video. By early 2013, Create a Sim was being developed using that same push and pull sculpting method from the final Sims 4 release, though clearly in a very rough early stage. Building was also supposedly in development at this time, though only a few screenshots exist of this. EA and Maxis created a huge branding campaign as the eventual release date inched closer and closer, and an announcement was on the horizon. Several large posters were designed, all using the slogan "Play with Life Together" and incorporating imagery of green and blue plumb bobs. This is because in Olympus, Sims controlled by players would have a blue plumb bob instead of a green one to indicate that they were being played by a real person. A lot of the marketing materials from this time combine the color green, representing the classic Sims franchise, and blue, representing the new multiplayer element of the series, as well as blue plumb bobs. At this stage, Olympus seemed to be nearing completion and was right on track for its 2014 release date. And then suddenly, just a year out from that date, everything was scrapped. Olympus, or The Sims 4 as it had come to be known throughout development, was no longer going to be an online game, and all of the thousands of hours that Maxis had spent writing, coding, and designing the game were thrown out the window. But why on earth would they do this, and why on earth would they do it so late into the game? Well, the answer is pretty simple. SimCity 2013. Okay, it's not that simple. There were obviously a lot of factors that went into this sudden change of direction, which we will talk about in a little bit, but you can attribute a lot of it to SimCity 2013. So for those who don't know, SimCity 2013 was the 5th installment in EA's extremely popular SimCity franchise, and it was a total disaster. The game required players to be constantly connected to the internet, even if they only intended to play single player, since the game had optional multiplayer features and cloud saves. Already annoyed by this feature, players were incensed when they brought the game, and servers proceeded to completely break down, making the game unplayable at launch. This led to hundreds of thousands of complaints, a petition that was taken to the White House, and an eventual apology from EA, who offered buyers a free game from their catalog for compensation. TLDR is that it was a PR nightmare, and it was so bad that Maxis Emeryville, who developed the game, had to shut down. This is by no means confirmed by any official source, so definitely take it with a grain of salt, but the most commonly shared theory is that this whole debacle really really scared Maxis and EA. It was really, really bad. If you were there for when this whole thing went down, you'll remember that EA was constantly in the headlines and not in a good way. I think this whole debacle really shook the company, and with so many of SimCity's issues being rooted in online play and multiplayer functionality, The Sims 4's literal entire selling point, they probably correctly felt that they weren't really in a position to release another online game, let alone one for their most prestigious franchise. A 2019 feature from Retro Gamer magazine sheds further light on the topic, quote, "Because of the inordinate amount of money that had been spent on the concept, EA felt that the risk was not worth the potential losses that such a dramatic change might bring, no doubt aided by the company's controversial handling of 2013's SimCity reboot." Lucy Bradshaw, who had been a Maxis general manager at the time, was brought back on board with The Sims. "I came back in after it was struggling to bring it back into something that felt more true to The Sims," she recalls, adding that the marketing and focus testing suggested that a multiplayer-only Sims game was not going to be favorably received. "I listened to every single interview, watched every video, and I kept hearing a theme. People were intrigued by a multiplayer Sims game, but that came hand in hand with The Sims having autonomy, and the player's control over this world was absolutely core. And so these two things were working in almost direct opposition with each other. The design around the multiplayer side of things, while I do think there's something there, it gave up too much of what was the essential appeal: voyeurism." This feature is interesting because, as far as I'm aware, it's the first time that anyone at EA or Maxis had acknowledged that The Sims 4 was originally going to be an online game. You have to keep in mind that the picture of how messy development was is very clear to us now because of hindsight and because of years of behind the scenes information gradually coming out. We know that the game was bare bones because the entire project had been gutted and hastily remade in the span of about a year. We know that the marketing campaign was secretive and mysterious, not because they wanted to build hype, but because they literally didn't have anything to show. We know that while the lack of open world and missing features were attributed to making the game easier to run on laptops and low-spec PCs, in reality it's easy to run because it was originally designed as a cross-platform multiplayer game with a very low graphical budget. But during the game's release and in the following years, players didn't know any of this. EA understandably kept Olympus and the sudden pivot during development under wraps, not wanting to bring any more bad press to a game that was already getting pretty mixed reviews. Again, take this one with a grain of salt because it's just my personal theory. Just my personal game theory, but here's just a rough summary of what I think may have happened. EA began working on Project Olympus shortly after the closure of The Sims Online. At this stage it was likely just a rough idea, probably just intended to be a spin-off and not a mainline game. After The Sims 3 release, they began looking to the future and what the eventual fourth installment of the game would look like. With all the work they had already done concepting Olympus, they figured that rather than just making it an online spin-off, it was time to take a bold new step and make the fourth mainline game an MMO. So over the course of the next few years, EA spent what I assume was probably millions developing Olympus into what would eventually become The Sims 4. In terms of graphics and features, it was a step down from The Sims 3 with a more simplified blocky style and many mainline features that wouldn't be included, but this was understandable given that it was going to be an online multiplayer experience. MMOs are very demanding to run, so simplifying the game was necessary so that players from all across the world could run and play the game from any device. Everything was on track for launch, including the marketing materials. In August of 2013, before the official Sims website launched, a different version of the site was leaked, clearly showing multiplayer assets. From the screenshot we can see icons for mail, chat, and friends, and this box art uses that classic Olympus blue to represent the multiplayer features. So it's clear that as late as 2013, The Sims 4 seemed to be fully on track to release as an online title. But then SimCity 2013 happened. It was almost comically terrible timing that just before EA was about to announce their biggest release ever, an online Sims game, they had a PR disaster of epic proportions, which was all based around a new installment of a popular Sim franchise having terrible multiplayer online functionality. Now they were really stuck between a rock and a hard place. Simmers worldwide had been waiting with bated breath for a Sims 4 announcement, so they couldn't afford to cancel the game or spend another 5 years remaking it, otherwise they'd lose that momentum. On the other hand, they knew how bad it would look to follow up the SimCity disaster with an announcement for another online game. So, scrambling to save face, EA made the tough decision to gut the entire game and keep the launch date. They only had a year, so they needed to be economical about it. They kept as much as they could. The art style remained the same, hairstyles, clothing, and items were kept, and the closed-off world and flat 2D map remained as well. With no big gameplay change or development to set this new generation apart from the others, they scrambled to put together a marketing campaign emphasizing the Sims themselves. They were smarter and more responsive than ever with real emotions and deep personalities. In reality, the Sims were no more realistic than they had been in any other entry, and the emotion mechanic felt like a gimmicky repackaging of the Sims 3 mood system. EA remained tight-lipped about The Sims 4, only releasing vague snippets and hints of what was to come, clearly because everything was on fire and they were trying their best to salvage what they could from the burning wreck of Project Olympus. This is the chain of events that makes the most sense to me, but again, it's entirely hypothetical, so take it with a huge grain of salt. So with all of this in mind, it kinda makes sense that The Sims 4 released the way that it did. The game did eventually settle into its own groove. Over the next few years they updated the maps with a bit more colour, they added toddlers and pools back into the game, and all was well. Except it wasn't, because Olympus is just the prologue in The Sims 4's long and storied history. Because then they started releasing expansions. Buckle in. The Sims franchise has always heavily relied on expansion packs to expand and, in some cases, pad out their games with new content and features. The Sims had a total of 7 expansion packs, which added tons of new features, locations, clothes, objects, and more. In The Sims 2, DLC was split into 2 categories: regular expansion packs, of which there were 8, and stuff packs, smaller bite-sized expansions that added new objects and outfits, but no new locations or gameplay features. There were 10 of these, making The Sims 2's total expansion pack count 18. The Sims 3 was the most egregious of the bunch. It had 11 expansion packs, 9 stuff packs, 20 in total, as well as an official Sims 3 store which sold worlds, items, and clothing for real money. Throughout the years, expansion packs had become a hot button topic, with many players accusing EA of money grabbing with the sheer number of DLC content they were pumping out. It was a divisive issue and became especially prevalent during the Sims 3 era, where many felt that EA had crossed the line. And though the community very much made their opinions known, unfortunately, this doesn't seem to have had any impact because it got so much worse with The Sims 4. Seriously, if you thought the expansion packs were excessive in The Sims 2 and 3, just wait until you see the state of The Sims 4. Not only does the game have 13 expansions and 18 stuff packs, but they also came out with 2 new types of expansion. Game packs were pitched as expansion packs but smaller, and kits are essentially even smaller stuff packs that introduce a few sets of outfits or a small collection of items. There are 12 and 19 of these packs respectively, putting The Sims 4's DLC count over 60, more than every other game in the series combined. So there are a lot of issues to unpack here. I'll see myself out. The Sims 4 Outdoor Retreat was a game pack released in January of 2015 to a reaction of overwhelming confusion. It wasn't labelled as an expansion or a stuff pack, but instead a game pack, which was an entirely new concept to players. In an article for Kotaku, EA described the new packs as such. A game pack is an entirely new product line for the Sims franchise. A game pack will allow you to add a uniquely themed experience to your game filled with new gameplay possibilities, introducing something new for you to do with your Sims. Play with new objects that offer all new interactions and a variety of new clothing, hairstyles, furnishings, and decor. For players who are familiar with our add-on content from previous iterations of The Sims, think of The Sims